You know what I don't think contractors do enough? I don't think they give themselves enough credit because most contractors are not underpricing because they're stupid. They're not underpricing because they don't care. They're not underpricing because they want to work their tail off for thin margins. Most of the time, they're underpricing because they're scared. They're scared of losing the job. They're scared of losing the customer. They're scared of hearing, that's too expensive. They're scared that the phone won't ring next week. They're scared that the crew that they have, they're not going to have enough work. They're scared that if they raise their prices, everything they've built might slow down. And honestly, that fear makes sense because when you own a business, pricing doesn't feel like math. It feels personal. It feels like pressure. It feels like risk. It feels like you're standing there with a number in your hand, hoping the customer doesn't flinch. And if they do flinch, a lot of contractors immediately assume the price must be wrong. But what if it's not? What if the real problem is that you've been trained to believe the goal is to win the job, instead of making sure the job actually supports the business? That's the conversation we're having today. I think a lot of contractors are underpricing their work without even realizing it. And I think it's costing them way more than they actually know or are willing to admit, not just financially, mentally, emotionally, at home, in their stress level, in how heavy the business feels every single day. So today we're going to talk about why contractors underprice, how it shows up, why it feels normal, and what needs to shift if you want the business to finally stop feeling so tight. So hang on. Most business owners I talk to are busy. They're booked out. They've got a great reputation. They're doing everything right. But when they actually sit down and look at their numbers, something doesn't quite add up. The profit doesn't match the effort, and it's usually not a sales problem. It's a visibility problem. I'm Shannon Howard. I work with HVAC owners, electricians, plumbers, and contractors to uncover hidden profit, fix those leaks, and help you keep more of what you earn. This is Profit Isn't an Accident. All right, let's get into this because I want to start by saying something that might feel a little uncomfortable. A lot of contractors are not pricing from numbers. They're pricing from fear. And I know that sounds harsh, but think about it. How many times have you put together an estimate and started adjusting the number in your head before the customer even saw it? You think, oh man, they probably won't go for that. That seems a bit high. I really don't want to lose this one. Someone else will just come in cheaper. Maybe I'll just take a little bit off here. We do need the work. And just like that, the price has changed. Not because the job changed, but not because the costs incurred change, not because your overhead changed. The price changed because your nervous system got involved. And that is where so many contractors really do get into trouble. Because when fear drives pricing, profit gets treated like an optional extra. And it's not optional. Profit is not greed. Profit is not padding. Profit is not you taking advantage of someone. Profit is what keeps your business alive. Profit is what pays for the slow season. Profit is what gives you breathing room when a truck breaks down. Profit is what lets you pay and retain good people. Profit is what lets you serve customers well without resenting the job. And it's what allows your business to support your life instead of consume it. But when you underprice, because of those fears, right, you remove that breathing room before the job even starts. And then you spend your entire job trying to make up for that decision that was just made at the estimate. That's exhausting. And I think a lot of contractors know exactly what I mean, right? You win the job. At first, it feels good. You're celebrating. You got the yes. You keep the schedule full. The customer chose you. But then the job starts. Something takes longer than expected. Material costs are higher than you thought. Your guy has to run back for something. The customer, of course, adds just this quick little thing. There's a delay. You have to answer more calls than expected. You eat a little time here, a little cost there, and by the end of it, that job that you were so happy to win, it barely made you anything. Or worse, and what I see is it actually costs you something. And the part that really stings is this. You were busy the whole time. You were working, your team was working, the customer paid, the job looked successful. But financially, it didn't actually move your business forward. That's the danger of underpricing. It creates that activity without enough reward. And after a while, that starts to mess with you because you start wondering why every month feels tight. You start wondering why you're working harder, but you're not getting ahead. You start wondering why your revenue is coming in, but there's still no breathing room. And most contractors do not immediately connect that back to pricing, right? They're blaming cash flow. They blame those slow paying customers. They blame expenses, maybe the economy. They blame needing more leads. And sure, those things do matter, but a lot of time the issue started way earlier. It started when you priced the job too low to begin with. Now let's talk about why this happens, because again, most contractors, you're not doing this on purpose. The first reason you underprice is because you're trying to stay competitive. And I totally get it. Nobody wants to price themselves out of the market. Nobody wants to lose every bid. Nobody wants to be known as the most expensive option in town. But here's the problem. A lot of contractors are trying to compete against numbers that they don't even understand. You don't know if the cheaper guy is profitable. You don't know if he's actually paying himself. You don't know if he's carrying proper insurance or if he's cutting corners. You don't know if he's drowning behind the scenes or if his books are a disaster. So when you match or you beat his price just because it's cheaper, you might be copying a broken business model. And that right there is dangerous because the cheapest contractor in town is not automatically the smartest contractor in town. Sometimes he's just the most underpriced. And if you build your pricing around that, you're letting someone else's bad numbers set the ceiling for your business. And that's not strategy, that is fear. The second reason contractors underprice is because they really want to win the job. And that's human. It feels good to win. It's that competitive nature that we have. It feels good when someone says yes to us. It feels good when we know that work is coming in. But winning the job is not the same as winning in business. And I want to repeat that to make sure you heard that, okay? Winning the job is not the same as winning in business. Because if you win the job at a price that doesn't support the work, the team, the overhead, and the business, you didn't really win. You just bought yourself some stress. You bought yourself a busy schedule. You bought yourself labor. You bought yourself risk. But you didn't buy yourself profit. And that's what a lot of contractors are doing without even realizing it. They're collecting these jobs, but they're not collecting margin. Now, the third reason contractors underprice is because they really don't know their true costs. This one is huge, and I see this all the time, right? A lot of contractors know materials, they know labor in a general sense, they know roughly what things cost. But they don't actually know the full cost of doing business, right? They're not fully accounting for overhead or drive time, admin time, payroll burden, callbacks. They're not fully accounting for equipment wear and tear or the time spent quoting, scheduling, managing, communicating, cleanup after the job. So the price, it looks okay on paper, but it's missing reality, and reality always shows up. It always shows up. You can ignore the overhead and the estimate, but the business still has to pay it. You can ignore the inefficiency in the estimate, but the labor still costs you. You can ignore callbacks in the estimate, but somebody still has to go back out. You can ignore your own time, but you know what? You're still spending it. And if the job doesn't pay you for those things, guess who does? You do. You do. The owner does. The business absorbs it. And that's why so many contractors feel like they're personally carrying the company on their shoulders, and it's heavy because they are. The pricing is not carrying enough weight, so the owner has to. And that's where the emotional pressure starts coming in, because underpricing doesn't just create a financial problem. It creates a leadership problem, a stress problem, a family problem. It creates a burnout problem. When pricing is too low, everything gets tighter. Payroll feels heavier, a slow week feels scarier, an unexpected bill feels even bigger for you. Hiring feels risky. Like, do I take on more staff right now? What if I can't keep them busy? Growth feels stressful, and the owner starts reacting to everything from pressure. It's not a fun way to run a business when everything is a fire. And I think a lot of contractors are living there, and they don't say it out loud, but they feel it. They know their business is moving. They know there's money coming in, but they also know it feels too tight. And that tightness usually means the business is not keeping enough from the work it's already doing. Now, here's another reason that contractors underprice. They feel guilty charging more. And this one is real, especially if you are a good person, and I know you are. You don't want to take advantage of people. You don't want to be unfair. You don't want to feel like you're gouging someone. But I need you to hear this clearly. Charging enough to run a healthy business is not taking advantage of people. It's responsibility, it's stewardship, it is leadership. Because if your business is constantly underpriced, eventually someone pays for that. Maybe it's you, maybe it's your family, maybe it's your employees, maybe it's the quality of work or the customer experience, but someone pays. Weak pricing creates pressure somewhere. Healthy pricing creates stability, and stability helps everyone. It helps your team, your customers, your family. It helps the business survive long term. So no, charging properly is not greed. It's actually how you stop building a business that runs on your exhaustion. And that is the part that I want contractors to really sit with. Because some of you, you're not tired because the work is hard. The work is hard, yes. But that's not the only thing. You're tired because the business does not have enough margin to breathe. So everything feels urgent, everything feels heavy, everything feels like it depends on you pushing harder. Even when the business is built that way, rest does feel impossible. Even when you're home, you're not really off. Even when you're with your family, your brain is still doing all that math. Even when things are technically okay, you're waiting for the next financial hit. And that's not normal just because it's common. And it's not the price that you have to pay forever. But it does start with telling the truth about pricing. Now let's talk about the phrase that gets contractors in trouble all the time. We'll make it up in volume. No, most of the time you won't. If a job is underpriced, doing more underpriced jobs usually does not fix the problem. It just multiplies it. More volume means more labor, more scheduling materials, more chances for mistakes, more customer communication, more overhead, more stress. And if the margin is not healthy enough underneath it, you just scale the pressure, not the profit. That's why some businesses grow and still feel worse, because growth without margin is not freedom. It's just more responsibility without enough reward. So the question actually can't be, how do we get more jobs? The better question is, are the jobs we're already doing actually paying us enough? And that question changes everything, because once you start asking that, you stop chasing activity for activity's sake. You start looking at the quality of revenue. You start looking at margin and true cost. You start looking at whether the business is actually being supported by the work. And that is where the shift happens. Now, if you're listening and you're thinking, okay, Shannon, but you know what? I just can't raise prices overnight. I get that. And I'm not saying you have to go make some reckless price change tomorrow and scale your whole market. I'm just saying you need to stop guessing. You need to understand your numbers well enough to know what your pricing actually needs to be. Start with your last few jobs. Look at what you charged. Then look at what actually happened. Not what you had hoped would happen, not what you estimated would happen, but what actually happened. How many labor hours did it really take? How much material did you really use? Was there drive time? Was there downtime? Was there rework? Was there a callback? Was there admin time? Did the job carry any of the overhead? Did it leave actual profit? That is the truth. And sometimes that truth is uncomfortable, but it's also very freeing because once you see it, you can fix it. You can adjust estimates. You can tighten processes. You can stop absorbing costs that should be priced in. You can stop saying yes to jobs that were never going to serve your business. You can start leading from clarity instead of from fear, and that changes how the business feels. Because confidence comes from knowing, not hoping. A lot of contractors are hoping their pricing works. They're hoping the job makes money. They're hoping the month works out. They're hoping volume solves the stress. You know this, though. Hope is not a pricing strategy. And honestly, you deserve better than that. You deserve to know and to understand what your business needs. You deserve to price in a way that supports your work, your team, your overhead, and your future. And I think that's where a lot of contractors need to stop apologizing. Stop apologizing for needing profit, for charging enough, for not being the cheapest. Stop apologizing for building something sustainable. Because the goal is not to be busy forever. The goal is to build a business that actually pays you, a business that gives you breathing room, a business that doesn't make you panic every single time unexpected happens, and a business that can grow with you without crushing you. And that's not going to happen if your pricing is built on fear. So if you take nothing else from this episode, take this. Underpricing is not just a pricing problem. It is a pressure problem, a burnout problem. It is a cash flow problem. It is a leadership problem. And you know what? It affects everything. And most contractors don't realize they're doing it because it just feels normal. It feels normal to just shave a little off. It feels normal to absorb a small cost. It feels normal to say yes because you need the work. It does feel normal to match the cheaper guy, right? Or to tell yourself you'll make it up later. But normal is not the same thing as healthy. And if your business feels financially tight all the time, this is one of the first places I want you to look because you might not need more work. You might need better priced work. You might not need to hustle harder, but you may need to stop letting fear set your numbers. And you may not need to become the cheapest option, right? You need to become the business owner who finally understands what their work is actually costing them. And that is where your power comes back. Not in guessing, not in chasing, not in panic pricing, but in clarity. Because once you understand the true cost of your work, you can price with confidence. And when you price with confidence, the business starts to feel different. It's less reactive. It's less fragile. It's less dependent on you constantly pushing. And that is what I want for contractors. Not just more revenue, not just more jobs. I want a business for you that actually supports the life that you work so hard to build. So if this episode hit home, I want you to go look at your last 3 jobs, not emotionally, but objectively, and ask yourself, did we price this from numbers or did we price it from fear? And that answer is going to tell you a lot. And you know what? It might be exactly where things start to change. I'll see you on the next episode. If this hit, there is a reason. Most businesses aren't broken. They just don't have clear visibility into where the money's actually going. So if you want help finding it, grab my free Profit Edge playbook or book a quick session with me. You'll find everything in the show notes. And if you haven't already, follow the show so you don't miss what's next.